The morning rain pelted against the windows of Riverside Cafe as Victoria Sterling wiped down the same table for the third time. Her mind drifting to the canvas waiting in her tiny apartment. At 26, she had become an expert at balancing coffee cups and dreams. Though lately, the dreams seemed to be losing the battle against mounting bills and rejection letters from art galleries. "Victoria, table 12 needs their check," called Marcus from behind the counter, his weathered face showing the strain of another slow morning in their struggling neighborhood cafe. She nodded, forcing a smile as she approached the lone customer, who had been nursing his black coffee for over an hour. Julian Ashford sat hunched over his laptop, his expensive clothes seeming out of place in the modest establishment. Victoria had served him several times over the past few months, always polite but distant, lost in whatever important business consumed his attention. "Here's your check, sir," Victoria said, placing the slip beside his cup. Julian looked up, his steel-gray eyes meeting hers for the first time with real focus. "Actually, could I get another coffee? And maybe a moment of your time?" Something in his tone made Victoria pause. "Of course. Let me get that coffee first." She returned with the steaming cup. Julian closed his laptop and studied her face, with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Victoria, isn't it? You've been working here long?" "About 2 years," she replied carefully. "Is there something wrong with the service?" "No, nothing like that." Julian ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture that seemed uncharacteristic for someone who appeared so controlled. "This might sound strange, but I have a proposition for you. Business proposition." Victoria's first instinct was to step back, but something in his voice held her in place. "What kind of business?" "I need someone to pretend to be my girlfriend for 1 month. Attend some dinners, a few social events. Nothing inappropriate, just public appearances. I'll pay you $100,000. The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. She stared at him, certain she had misheard. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" Julian's expression remained serious. "I know how it sounds, but I'm completely legitimate. I'm the CEO of Ashford Technologies, and I'm facing some unusual challenges with conservative investors who believe my personal life affects my business credibility. They want to see stability, a committed relationship. I need someone who can play that role convincingly. You want to pay me to pretend to be your girlfriend?" Victoria's voice rose slightly, causing a few other customers to glance their way. "Do you have any idea how insulting that is? I understand your reaction, but please hear me out." Julian leaned forward, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "This isn't about anything improper. Strictly professional. You'd have your own accommodations, a complete wardrobe, and training in social etiquette. All you'd need to do is attend events with me and act like we're in a relationship." Victoria felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Mr. Ashford, I don't know what kind of woman you think I am, but I'm not for sale. Not trying to buy you," Julian said quickly. "I'm offering you a job, a very well-paying, temporary job that could change your life. I've seen you working here, and I know you're intelligent, articulate, and you carry yourself well. That's exactly what I need. How do you know anything about me?" Victoria's voice carried a mix of anger and curiosity. "I've observed you over the months I've been coming here. You handle difficult customers with grace. You're quick-witted, and you have this natural warmth that people respond to. Those are the qualities I need for this arrangement." Victoria stood frozen, her mind reeling. $100,000 was more money than she had ever imagined having at once. It could pay off her student loans, her mother's medical bills, and give her the freedom to pursue her art without worrying about rent. "Why me?" she asked finally. "Surely someone in your social circle would be more appropriate. That's exactly the problem." "Anyone in my circle would have their own agenda or connections that could complicate things. I need someone completely separate from my world, someone who has their own reasons for keeping this arrangement confidential." Thomas Kane, Julian's CFO and closest friend, chose that moment to enter the cafe. Victoria watched as the older man approached their table, his expression grave. "Julian, we need to talk," Thomas said, then noticed Victoria. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were in a meeting. Thomas, this is Victoria Sterling. Victoria, this is Thomas Kane, my CFO. He's actually the one who suggested this arrangement. Thomas extended his hand to Victoria, his smile professional but warm. Miss Sterling, I hope Julian has explained the situation adequately. We're facing a critical time with our investors, and frankly, we need someone who can help us navigate these social expectations. You're both insane, Victoria said, but her tone had lost some of its earlier anger. This is like something out of a movie. I understand your skepticism, Thomas continued. But consider this. You'd be helping a legitimate business navigate a difficult situation. And you'd be well compensated for your time and discretion. We're not asking you to compromise your values just to attend some social functions. Victoria looked between the two men, seeing the desperation they were trying to hide. And after 1 month, this all ends. Completely, Julian assured her. No strings attached, no expectations beyond the agreed-upon appearances. We'll have earned enough money to pursue whatever dreams you have, and we'll have satisfied our investors' concerns about stability. The cafe around them seemed to fade as Victoria wrestled with the decision. She thought of her easel at home, covered in dust, because she had been too exhausted from double shifts to paint. She thought of her mother's worried voice on the phone, trying to hide her struggles with medical expenses. She thought of the rejection letters from galleries, all citing her lack of professional representation and resources. What exactly would I have to do? She heard herself asking. Julian's expression brightened slightly. 10 dinner parties, maybe a charity gala or two, some business functions where investors will be present. We need to appear comfortable. Together, like a couple who's been dating for several months, Thomas would coach you on the backgrounds of important people, social expectations, that sort of thing. In the media? What if someone recognizes you? We'll keep a low profile. These are private functions, not public events. The goal is to present a stable image to a specific group of investors, not to create a media spectacle. Victoria closed her eyes, feeling as though she was standing at the edge of a cliff. If I were to agree to this insane proposal, and I'm not saying I am, what would be the next step? We'd start with a complete makeover, Thomas said. Wardrobe, styling, etiquette coaching, ticket coaching. You'd essentially become the perfect girlfriend for Austin's tech elite. Is it? And if I decide this is too much at any point, you can walk away, Julian said. Though obviously we'd hope you'd honor the full-month commitment. Victoria opened her eyes and looked at Julian, really seeing him for the first time. Beneath his confident exterior, she glimpsed something vulnerable, almost desperate. This wasn't just about business for him. It was about survival in a world where image mattered as much as innovation. $100,000, she repeated softly. Plus all expenses for wardrobe, accommodations if needed, and any coaching required, Julian confirmed. Victoria took a deep breath, feeling as though she was about to step into an entirely different life. I must be completely out of my mind, but yes, I'll do it. Julian's entire demeanor shifted, relief flooding his features. Really? You're sure? I'm sure I'm terrified, but yes, I'm sure. Victoria extended her hand to shake his. But I want a contract. A legal, detailed contract that spells out exactly what this arrangement involves and what it doesn't. Of course, Thomas said, pulling out his business card. Can you meet us tomorrow morning to go over the details and begin the preparation? Victoria took the card. She felt as though she was holding her future in her hands. What have I just gotten myself into? Julian stood, leaving money for his coffee and a generous tip. Something that might just change both our lives, Victoria. Thank you for taking this chance. After they left, Victoria sank into Julian's vacated chair, staring at the business card in her trembling hands. In 24 hours, she would begin. A masquerade that could either fulfill her dreams or destroy them completely. Either way, her life as a struggling waitress, an unknown artist, was about to end forever. The rain continued to fall against the windows. But for the first time in months, Victoria Sterling saw a possibility in the storm. The transformation began at dawn the next morning in Julian's penthouse apartment overlooking the city skyline. Victoria stood in the marble foyer, clutching her worn canvas bag and feeling completely out of place among the sleek modern furniture and expensive artwork that decorated his home. Welcome to your new temporary reality, Thomas said. leading her through the spacious living room toward what appeared to be a conference room. We have exactly 72 hours to prepare you for the most important dinner of Julian's career. Victoria's eyes widened as she took in the wall-mounted screens displaying photos and biographical information of various wealthy individuals. This looks like something from a spy movie. Julian emerged from the kitchen carrying 3 cups of coffee, his casual jeans and sweater, making him seem more approachable than the intense businessman from yesterday. I suppose it does feel a bit like espionage. We're essentially creating a new identity for you. Speaking of which, Thomas opened a leather portfolio. We need to establish your background story. You can't be a waitress from Riverside Cafe anymore. These people would see right through that. For the next hour, they crafted Victoria's new persona. She became Victoria Sterling, an emerging interior designer who had recently moved to the city from Portland. Her small boutique firm specialized in sustainable design for tech companies, which explained how she had met Julian. They had been dating quietly for 6 months, keeping their relationship private while both focused on their demanding careers. Remember, Thomas emphasized, you're intelligent, educated, and successful in your own right. These investors need to see Julian was someone who's his equal, not someone he's rescuing or supporting. Victoria practiced her new backstory until she could recite it naturally. Then Thomas handed her a thick folder. Now for the really challenging part. You need to learn about everyone who will be at Friday's dinner, their backgrounds, their interests, their pet peeves, and most importantly, their relationships with each other. The next stop was the shopping district's most exclusive boutiques. Victoria had never imagined spending more on a single dress than she typically earned in 3 months. Julian barely glanced at price tags as personal stylists assembled what he called investment pieces for her new wardrobe. This feels completely surreal, Victoria whispered to Julian as a saleswoman held up a stunning emerald silk gown that cost more than Victoria's annual rent. I know it's overwhelming, Julian replied, watching as the stylist assessed the dress against Victoria's complexion. But remember, this isn't about changing who you are. It's about presenting the best version of yourself in a different context. The dress fitting revealed something unexpected. As Victoria stood before the 3-way mirror in the elegant gown, she saw a confident, sophisticated woman looking back at her. The expensive fabric draped perfectly over her curves, and the rich color brought out the warmth in her brown eyes and highlighted the natural auburn tones in her dark hair. You look stunning, Julian said softly, and Victoria caught something in his voice that went beyond mere approval of her appearance. It's just the dress, Victoria replied, but she couldn't deny the surge of confidence she felt. No, Julian shook his head. It's definitely not just the dress. The final element of her transformation was etiquette coaching with Margaret Thornfield, a stern woman in her 60s who had spent decades training the children of wealthy families in proper social behavior. Posture, Miss Sterling, Margaret commanded, as Victoria practiced walking in heels across the hardwood floor of Julian's living room. You're not serving tables anymore? You're gracing a room with your presence? Victoria stumbled slightly but caught herself. This is harder than it looks. Everything worthwhile is, Margaret replied. Now let's practice dinner conversation. Remember, you're not trying to impress anyone with how much you know. You're demonstrating your intelligence through thoughtful questions and genuine interest. In others, they rehearse scenarios late into the evening. Victoria learned the subtle art of deflecting personal questions while appearing open and friendly. She practiced the delicate balance of supporting Julian's business goals while maintaining her own apparent independence and opinions. What if they ask about my family? Victoria asked during one of their practice sessions. You grew up in a middle class family in Oregon, Thomas prompted. Your father was a high school teacher. Your mother worked part-time at a local library. They taught you the value of education and hard work, which shaped your appreciation for both artistic beauty and practical functionality in design. Julian watched these coaching sessions with growing fascination. Victoria was a quick learner, but more than that, she brought something authentic to her performance that no amount of coaching could teach. When she smiled, it reached her eyes. When she laughed, it was genuine. When she asked questions, her curiosity was real. You're enjoying this, he observed during a break in their practice. Victoria considered his comment carefully. Parts of it, yes. I've always been interested in people, their stories, what motivates them. This is like getting a crash course. In psychology and sociology, is that what you do when you're painting? Study people? Sometimes, Victoria admitted. I like capturing moments that reveal something true about human nature. The way someone's shoulders relax when they think no. One is watching, or how their eyes light up when they talk about something they're passionate about. Julian found himself genuinely curious about her art for the first time. What kind of moments have you captured recently? Victoria hesitated, then pulled out her phone to show him a photo of her latest painting. It depicted the view from Riverside. Calf on a rainy morning. But the focus was on the interplay of light and shadow on the faces of customers lost in their own thoughts. That's incredible, Julian said, studying the image. You captured something I never noticed, even though I was probably sitting right there. You were? Victoria smiled. Third table from the window, completely absorbed in whatever was on your laptop screen. You had this expression of intense concentration mixed with frustration. I almost included you in the painting, didn't you? Because I didn't know your story yet. I prefer to understand my subjects before I try to capture their essence. Julian looked at her with new respect. And what do you think you understand about me now? Before Victoria could answer, Thomas returned from his phone call, his expression grave. We have a problem. Richard Pemberton just confirmed he'll be attending Friday's dinner. Julian's face went pale. The Richard Pemberton? The one who torpedoed the Morrison Group's funding because he disapproved of their CEO's lifestyle choices? The very same. Apparently, he's considering a significant investment in Ashford Technologies. But only if he's convinced you're the kind of stable, family-oriented leader he wants to back. Victoria looked between them, sensing the increased pressure. What does this mean for Friday? It means, Thomas said seriously, that this dinner just became the most important performance of your life. Pemberton has the influence to make or break our funding round. If he's not convinced that Julian is settling down with the right kind of woman, we could lose everything we've worked for. The weight of responsibility settled on Victoria's shoulders like a heavy cloak. This was no longer just about helping Julian navigate some social expectations. She was now responsible for the future of his company and the livelihoods of his employees. What exactly does Pemberton consider the right kind of woman? Victoria asked. Margaret Thornfield, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. Traditional values, strong family background, intelligent but not threatening to male authority, supportive of her partner's career ambitions. In other words, the perfect corporate wife from 1955. That's not who I am, Victoria said quietly. No. Julian agreed, but that's who you'll need to appear to be on Friday night. Victoria spent that evening alone in her apartment, staring at her easel and wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. The money would solve her immediate problems, but at what cost? She was about to spend an evening pretending to be someone she fundamentally disagreed with, supporting values that went against everything she believed about equality and independence. Yet when she thought about Julian's desperate expression, the jobs that depended on his company's success, and the dreams that $100,000 could make possible, she knew she couldn't back out now. Friday evening arrived with unseasonable warmth for early spring. Victoria stood before her bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the sophisticated woman staring back at her. The emerald dress hugged her figure perfectly. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo, and her makeup was flawless. She looked like she belonged in Julian's world. The question was whether she could convince herself and everyone else that she actually did. The Grandview restaurant's private dining room epitomized understated luxury, with its crystal chandeliers casting warm light over mahogany panels and oil paintings that probably cost more than most people's homes. Victoria's hand trembled slightly. As Julian helped her from the car, the weight of the evening's importance pressing down on her like a physical force. Remember, Julian whispered as they approached the entrance. You're Victoria Sterling, successful interior designer, and you're completely comfortable in this environment? Victoria squeezed his arm, drawing strength from the contact. And you're Julian Ashford? Brilliant CEO who's lucky enough to be dating someone who challenges him intellectually while supporting his ambitions? Julian smiled, the first genuine expression she had seen from him all day. When you put it like that, it almost sounds believable. Inside, the dinner party was already in full swing. Thomas had prepared Victoria for the guest list, but seeing them in person was overwhelming. These were people whose names appeared regularly in business magazines, whose decisions affected thousands of jobs and millions of dollars. Richard Pemberton commanded attention from the center of the room. Tall and distinguished with silver hair and piercing blue eyes, he possessed the kind of presence that made everyone else seem slightly diminished by comparison. His wife Eleanor stood beside him, her posture perfect and her smile practiced. "Julian, my boy," Pemberton's voice carried across the room as he noticed their arrival. "Come introduce us to this mysterious woman we've heard so much about." Victoria felt every eye in the room focus on her as Julian guided her toward their host. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she forced herself to smile with the confidence Margaret had drilled into her. "Richard, Eleanor, I'd like you to meet Victoria Sterling," Julian said smoothly. "Victoria, this is Richard and Eleanor Pemberton. It's such a pleasure to meet you both," Victoria said, extending her hand with practiced grace. "Julian has told me wonderful things about your foundation's work with educational initiatives." Eleanor's eyes brightened with surprise and approval. "Wow, how thoughtful of you to mention that. So few people realize that our philanthropic work is just as important to us as our business ventures. Well, I believe that how we contribute to our communities says as much about us as what we achieve professionally," Victoria replied, drawing on her genuine beliefs rather than her coached responses. Richard studied her with obvious interest. "Julian mentioned you're in interior design. That must be fascinating work, creating environments that reflect people's personalities and needs." "It really is." Victoria's nervousness began to fade as she found herself on familiar ground. "Particularly interested in how space affects human behavior and well-being. The right environment can actually improve creativity and productivity while reducing stress." "How intriguing," Richard leaned forward. "Have you applied those principles to any tech companies?" Victoria glanced at Julian, who nodded almost imperceptibly. This was their planned connection story. Actually, that's how Julian and I met. My firm was consulting on the design of Ashford Technology's new innovation lab. We ended up having these incredible conversations about how physical space can either enhance or inhibit breakthrough thinking. "And what did you conclude?" Eleanor asked, genuinely curious. "That most traditional office designs are actually counterproductive to innovation," Victoria said, her passion for the subject overriding her nervousness. "People need spaces that allow for both collaboration and solitude. Areas that stimulate creativity, but also provide retreat when they need to focus deeply." Julian watched in amazement as Victoria captivated the group with her insights. She wasn't reciting coached answers. She was sharing authentic expertise and perspective that happened to align perfectly with their fabricated story. As they moved to the dining table, Victoria found herself seated between Richard and Dr. Harrison Webb, another potential investor. The conversation flowed naturally through topics ranging from sustainable architecture to the psychology of workspace design. Victoria discovered that her genuine interests and knowledge made her the perfect dinner companion for this group of Condesi, accomplished individuals. "You know, Victoria," Richard said as the main course was served, "you're not what I expected when Julian said he was bringing someone special." Victoria's heart skipped, wondering if she had somehow given herself away. "Oh, what were you expecting? Someone more ornamental, I suppose." Too many successful young men choose partners based purely on appearance rather than substance. It's refreshing to meet someone who clearly has her own accomplishments and perspectives. Relief flooded through Victoria. "I certainly hope. I'm more than just decorative," she said with a smile. "Though I do appreciate beautiful things, it's hard not to when you work with design." Dr. Webb leaned into the conversation. "Speaking of beautiful things, Julian tells us you're also an artist in your spare time. What medium do you work in?" Victoria felt Julian tense beside her. This wasn't part of their prepared story. She had a split second to decide whether to deflect or tell the truth. "I paint," she said simply. "Mostly oils, focusing on urban scenes and the people who inhabit them. I'm fascinated by the stories we can read in everyday moments." How wonderfully authentic, Eleanor said warmly. So, many people claim to be artists, but never actually create anything. What draws you to urban subjects? Victoria found herself speaking from the heart. I think cities are where humanity is most visible. In a rural setting, people can hide from each other, maintain privacy and distance. But in the city, we're all thrown together. We reveal ourselves in how we navigate crowds, how we treat strangers, how we find moments of beauty or connection in unexpected places. The table had grown quiet, everyone listening intently to her words. Victoria realized she had completely abandoned her careful persona and was simply being herself. That's a fascinating perspective, Richard said thoughtfully. You see the city as a canvas that reveals human nature? Exactly, Victoria nodded, her eyes lighting up. Every coffee shop, every subway platform, every park bench is a stage where real human drama plays out. The challenge is capturing those authentic moments in a way that honors the people living them. Julian stared at Victoria, seeing her in an entirely new light. This wasn't the nervous waitress he had hired, or even the polished woman they had created through coaching. This was someone with genuine depth, passion, and insight that commanded respect from some of the most successful people in the country. As the evening progressed, Victoria found herself relaxing completely. The conversation touched on art, business ethics, social responsibility, and the role of technology in shaping human connection. She discovered that beneath their wealth and power, these people were genuinely interested in ideas and impact. You know, Julian, Richard said, as dessert was served, you're a very lucky man. It's rare to find someone who can challenge you intellectually while clearly supporting your vision. I think I'm the lucky one, Victoria said, looking at Julian with an expression that wasn't entirely fabricated. Julian sees possibilities that others miss. He's trying to build technology that actually serves humanity rather than just generating profit. Julian met her eyes, and for a moment, the pretense fell away entirely. He saw genuine admiration there, and something else that made his breath catch. That's exactly the kind of partnership that leads to lasting success, Eleanor observed, both personal and professional. As the evening wound down, Richard pulled Julian aside while Victoria chatted with the other guests. That woman is remarkable, Julian, intelligent, accomplished, and clearly devoted to you. I have to admit, I had some concerns about your focus and stability, but seeing you two together has put those concerns to rest. She is pretty incredible, Julian agreed, realizing he wasn't acting anymore. Don't let her get away, Richard advised seriously. Women like that are extremely rare, and they don't stay unattached for long. The ride back to Victoria's apartment was quiet, both of them processing the evening's success and their own confused feelings. Julian walked her to her door, neither quite ready for the evening to end. You were amazing tonight, Julian said softly. I mean, truly extraordinary. The way you connected with everyone, the insights you shared, how natural and authentic you were. I stopped pretending halfway through, Victoria admitted. I just started being myself and hoped it would be enough. It was more than enough. It was perfect. Julian stepped closer, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. Victoria, I need to tell you something. This started as a business arrangement, but somewhere along the way, it became something else for me. Victoria's heart began racing. Julian, we agreed this was just temporary, just until you've satisfied your investors. I know what we agreed, Julian said, reaching up to gently touch her face. But I also know that tonight, when you looked at me and talked about my vision for technology, you weren't acting. And when? I watched you captivate some of the most sophisticated people I know just by being genuinely yourself. I realized I've fallen in love with the real you. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. This is so complicated. I'm not really the person they met tonight. I'm a waitress who paints in her spare time and struggles to pay rent. I don't belong in your world.